Oh, hey there. What's your current project?
I thought I told you already. The electrical, phase 2.
Oh yeah, must have temporarily short-circuited.
Wait a second. Are these electrical puns?
Guilty as charged. I couldn't resist, Tor.
You need to hold your volts. I'm supposed to be the punny one.
I'm just harnessing my full potential.
I did this to myself. What is up, my dudes and dudettes? Thank you for joining us. Behind that camera is Colleen, and I am your MC, Todd. And if you are new to this channel, we make these outrageously educational YouTube videos of us converting this cargo van you see behind me here into the ultimate adventure vehicle on wheels. Today, we are covering the highly anticipated, I know you've been waiting for it, the electrical phase 2. Now this one is going to be a little bit different than what we've done in the past because we covered a lot of these ideas and concepts in the first electrical install video. So for this one, we kind of just did it and then filmed it after the fact. Oh my goodness, enough of the chit chat. Let's conduct ourselves and get into it. Okay, before we get started, let's talk about our plan for AC wiring. We have 6 total AC runs. 3 of those will go under the van to pass from the driver's side, where our electrical cabinet is, to the passenger side. Now, 2 of these runs are for the galley plug / induction cooktop and the microwave. There are these 3-inch hole covers on each side of the van right in front of the rear wheels. We'll be utilizing these to pass wires out from the interior and along the underside of the van. Finally, the last wire only needs to exit from the driver's side as it will be sent to the rear of the van to spend the rest of its days as an outdoor plug accessible from the outside of the van. Under those dust covers, there are some sharp edges inside that we need to take care of. We turn to our old friend Trimlock, protecting edges since 1971. I tried a lot of different methods to get these up in there, and ultimately at the end of the day, sacrificing my hand to the belly of the beast proved best. You might want to round up a friend with small hands for this one, folks. I also drilled a few holes around the outside and applied a bit of rust bullet to protect those naked edges from iron oxide. We'll talk a bit more about the use of these later on. That outside AC plug is going to go in here inside kind of like an Agency 6 type storage locker so that it's completely hidden from the outside and you have to unlock and open it up to plug stuff into it. For this particular project, I would always dry route the conduit itself first. I have a spare tire basket water tank going in, which I also dry fit prior to this, making sure I understood the clearances. It basically goes straight up on the side, so as long as you stay outside of the basket, you are Gucci. I then went across this beam and through a couple of holes in the subsequent beams through which the 1/2-inch liquid tight conduit fits through perfectly. From there, I went up and into the wall cavity. I then pulled all of this out and went to feed the wire. To feed the wire, you'll want to clamp the conduit to something stable, or better yet, have a friend hold the other end. Unfortunately, I couldn't find any of those during the filming of this clip, and my neighbors apparently don't want to be YouTube celebrities. I then pulled it as straight as a giraffe with a neck brace and pushed the wire in from one end. I then took the van to hole saw hell, punching 4 holes down the wall on the passenger side and 3 on the driver's side. While the hole saw was still warm, I also punched another set through the C-pillar. Then, using the magnetic attachment for the bore scope that I recently made a YouTube short on, you'll want to check that out, I went and made sure to clean up all the metal bits and chips and nuggets, or as the professionals call it, swarf, down in the wall cavity. I also used this tool to fish out the hole saw plugs and discs and saucers. Unfortunately, no professional name for these, well, at least from the AI that is writing this script. I made sure to deburr the edges and add plenty of rust bullet before adding rubber grommets to each hole. And a tip for you, put a little bit of hand soap on the inside of the grommets. It makes feeding the conduit through them so much easier. And if you were wondering why 4 holes on the passenger side, well, it's because I'm also running the PEX from my hot water heater up through this route with these AC wires. Alright, so you remember those holes we drilled before where they are to mount this thing, a rubber boot from TH Marine? This was like a paper cut between the toes trying to get this to fit. You can see my screwdriver up there and then my arm jamming up and through the frame of the van, all while getting to lay on my back the whole time. I first saw somebody do this on Sprinter Source, but a big giant butt. It was on a 170 wheelbase Sprinter, and there is just a lot more room around this hole on that van. You can see it's doable, but it was not easy, my friends. So the passenger side was even worse, probably because I'm right-handed and needed to use my left. Also with the PEX on this side, it was just a whole lot tighter and the arm angles are just as awkward as attempting to open a push door by pulling it in public. I originally was planning on filming this side so you all could see how I do it, but after wasting about 45 minutes or so of SD card space, I shut it down. Overall, it turned out pretty crispy and I'm super happy with it, but I wish I had access to a lift to tackle these extended projects laying under the van. I think things like this would be a lot easier. If you ran your wires and plumbing a different way, let us know in the comments below. We'd love to hear from you. This is a new tool I picked up.
Who knows what time it is? I'll tell you what time it is. It's time to learn about a new van tool you can use.
This is an internal or sometimes called reversible deburring tool from Nagoya. It comes in 3 different sizes which you can order separately or as a set. It has a little plunger on the backside which kicks the wedge in different directions so you can put it in a hole, push the button to catch the wedge, spin it to deburr, and then press the button again to remove it. It's been a great addition for all these riv nut holes I've put in to mount the conduit underneath the van. All those riv nuts hold things tight along our final conduit highway which goes out the boot, over the top of the leaf spring support and looping around the frame. Afterwards I head towards the rear of the van, leaving plenty of space around the brake lines and tuck it along the first cross frame member I encounter, to which I repeat the exact same thing on the other side. For the rear external outlet, I follow the other 2 lines out of the driver's side boot, but instead of crossing the frame member, I go through it and towards the rear of the van. I have one more anchor point before going through the next frame member and crossing along that one to the passenger's side. I keep things tucked along the main frame, being sure to stay out of the spare tire basket envelope, and continue over the tailpipe and temporarily terminate here. For wiring in the water heater line, I have this plug that I picked up on Amazon that is waterproof, or at least very, very water resistant. And I have my liquid tight cord grip with a piece of shrink tube on here. I drilled this hole under the van and into the rocker. I mounted this plug by drilling and tapping M3 holes straight into the metal of the van and used the supplied screws to secure it in place. This is probably completely unnecessary, but I put some silicone sealant around the perimeter of the plug. Since it's under the van, I wanted everything impenetrable. For the actual plug end, I'm going to wait to wire this up for a minute because I'm working on the L-track mounting that needs to come down through the floor here, but this will be wired into the 120 volt AC leads on the IsoTemp water heater. This plug allows me to unplug and pull the water heater out easily if I ever need to service or replace it. Alright, from that junction box, it goes through the C-pillar, up, over here, and down. And there's going to be one more junction box here. There's actually 2 wires in this particular sheathing. One of these is for a little outlet right here, and this other one will basically break out and go down to this wire that we just ran. This is the one that goes down to that water plug there. This will come up and tie into a junction box right here. This is looking up behind the rear locker. There's normally a 3-inch factory dust cover here, and I'm going to utilize this hole to minimize the amount of cutting. The daylight you can see is from our custom locker boxes on the outside, more on that later. I've drilled holes for mounting a box here and then had to file a couple of little notches for the actual plug screws. I picked up this round outdoor electrical box from Amazon, which I'll attach to the van with those 2 screw holes I drilled. It's big enough to hold a standard GFCI outlet as well, and then I'll connect the AC wires we ran earlier to a liquid tight right angle cord grip I have on the back here. Now some of you may be wondering why I chose a circular box. Well, a normal outlet box doesn't cover this entire opening, but a circle one does, so it seemed like a more well-rounded option here. Get it? Circle? Round? Whatever, roll the next clip. One thing I didn't realize until I was in the weeds for this project is that the inner posts in these enclosures don't match up with a standard outlet plug, so I had to modify things a bit. I completely machined down the inner posts and then shortened the outer posts so I could machine an ABS adapter that was deep enough to simply thread the screws for the plug into it. To seal things up nice and tight, I use marine-grade silicone sealant not only on the plugs around the perimeter, but also around the ABS adapter. In addition, I'm going to also put some more sealant on the front of this adapter against the van. What are we worried about now? Well, with this, that not getting in. Here's that box all mounted up to the inside with the liquid-tight cord grip all snugged up. I made a few standoffs so I didn't have super long screws and also thought it was a cleaner look anyways. I also put silicone sealant around the outside and where the standoffs hit the van. Of course, the screws to mount the outlet were no longer long enough, so I took a long drive to the Ace Hardware to look for a long while for the longest 632s they had, just to be sure they were long enough. But because they were indeed too long, I had to cut them to size. I hope you enjoyed this prolonged explanation. Here are the 2 pieces going in to complete the job. I have pretty high confidence that the RV outlet cover will seal on top of the adapter, but the adapter actually to the van I'm not so sure about, so I'm going to apply some silicone sealant to the back of it before we install it. I usually like the 3M stuff better, but for this one I'm using Starbright Starlight, only tube of marine grade silicone sealant I saw in the hardware store that night.
All right, here's the final solution for our outdoor outlet. Something that we really wanted on this van was to be able to plug a 110-volt circuit in from the outside of the van with all the doors shut. Most people put those kind of up in this region with a little plastic kind of outlet cover. We think it kind of looks like a mass-produced RV. It cheapens it up a little bit in our opinion. So we went full custom like we always do. You've probably seen these lock boxes from Flatline Van Co. and Agency 6. Well, we actually made our own here so that there's no screw heads showing from the outside of the van so that it's a really clean look. Buried inside this lock box is our outdoor plug right here, which you saw us just wire, and you can simply go ahead, insert the plug like that, and power things from outside the vehicle. We think this is a pretty elegant and clean solution, and we're really happy with how it turned out.
I decided to make some junction boxes on each side of the van where we ran that conduit. I used a sheet of 3/8" ABS that I picked up locally from Tap Plastics. It's great because they cut to size right there on the spot. The nice thing about ABS is it's strong, durable, won't rot, and can be processed with normal woodworking tools. On the driver's side junction box, I had to drill an extra hole in the side of it, but nothing a hole saw can't handle. So this is the junction box. I got one lead coming from here. This is the bench and the water heater. And then I've got the 3 coming from the other side. This is the microwave, the cooktop, and then the outdoor plug. I really wanted to use 3 of these, but it's just too tight to fit 3 of these. So I'm using the little cable gland here in the middle, and then they'll come out the top and feed up to the electrical panel here. So that's what we are going with. It's not perfect, but it will work. All right, I made another one of these for the passenger side. This is with the little block box in the background. You can see how I mounted this here. I just take little 37mm long spacers that I turn down on the lathe and attach them with screws on the front and back. This one has the microwave and the cooktop / galley plug lines coming up from the bottom here, and they will go out the top there. Here's the junction box mounted in, or the J-box as the pros call it. No one calls it that. It's temporarily held in place with a clamp, but eventually I'm going to glue this in with Sikaflex 252. Now, the main reason I'm adding this junction box in the first place is because I had to pre-run all these wires through the conduit, and a couple of them weren't long enough to reach the ultimate end destination of the electrical panel. In hindsight, I think it looks pretty clean, but in the future, if I build another van, I could probably just cap each of these conduits off here and run the wires as a bundle together. This is the joy about building these vans, is you kind of just have to do it and learn as you go, pivoting when necessary and making notes for if you ever do it again. Real quick, before we jump into the DC wire runs we added during this phase, I wanted to show you a glimpse of how we planned this all out. This is brought to you by Google Sheets. Moonraker Design Co. runs on G Suite. Sponsor me please, Google. Anyways, this is actually pretty simple. We have each of the items/appliances, their respective amp draw. Then we planned the fuse or breaker size. Some of these are recommendations from the component manuals themselves. Then we have the total run length. For a DC circuit, this includes the positive and the negative length. So if you only measure out one direction, you'll need to double it. And then finally, we have one column that is the maximum allowed voltage drop. You will see two numbers, 3 and 10%, thrown around all the time. According to ABYC standards, 3% should be for essential or critical safety items, and 10% can be used for everything else. Now, to actually calculate the wire gauge, we need to use a table or tool. Our favorite method is using the circuit wizard on the Blue Sea Systems website. Y'all know I'll link you below. It has entry fields for circuit voltage, load amps, total length of conductor, and voltage drop with tool tips to help guide you through the process. The other tight part of this is it actually explains the results. You can see for this particular example, accounting for opacity alone, we could have used 18 gauge wire, but because of the voltage drop requirements, we actually need to use 14 gauge. It's important to remember you can always go to a larger gauge wire, aka a lower number, with the only negatives being additional cost and weight. We did this on a few of our circuits since you have to order wire in spools, and we tried to maximize usage of those said spools. We are running rear speaker wires and wires for overhead door lights in through these rubber boots. In order to do so, you have to take them off. For the ones on the door, you'll want to start by slowly, and I mean slowly, pulling the rubber boot off the clip. You'll want to pull it out to the sides before trying to pull it off the lips of the clip because they are paper thin and as brittle as dried pasta. Alright, here's the trick to get this out without breaking it. I ended up pushing a flathead screwdriver in through this hole and pushed that clip down, which got that lower corner out. And then I actually came from the inside of the other clip with this pick tool, and I just grabbed the edge of that one and pulled it up. And once you get two of these done, that thing pops out, no problem. These are super easy to break. I'll go ahead and link the part in the description below. Unfortunately, you have to buy this whole tube, both plastic pieces and this tube. That's the only way that Mercedes sells it. So just be careful not to break these, because then you gotta run your wires through a whole new tube. Now this upper one's a lot easier to take out because you can just reach your hand in this cavity here and just pop the little tabs out, and that will get that one out. To pull the wires through, I actually first sent a piece of leftover fuel line from the S-bar heater install, then taped both wires to that and pulled it through. All the ribs on the rubber boot make this a little bit of a pain, but once the wires are through, I could pull everything tight. I'm using 16 gauge speaker wire, the same stuff for my audio video, and for the rear lights, I'm using 16 gauge flat tinned ribbon boat cable. This has been a favorite of mine for lower amp runs. For the speaker cable, it goes through the boot and then up the side here. And right now I just have them terminated at the top there until I get the speakers wired in. For these rear garage lights, they go down through here, through the boot, and then across like this. Eventually the garage light will be up top here with the speaker. But for now I have the wire terminated right here because I want to put a little push button right here on the door to basically turn on and off the individual garage lights up here. I would like these separately controlled. So I'm going to put a button on this side of the door and a button on the other side. Both the garage overhead lights and the water pump cables follow the same path as our other cables up the C-pillar. They split off with the wire bundle headed towards the rear of the van where they are clearly labeled, then continue on with the factory wiring harness that we buried away in the wall. Check out that video if you haven't already. For the rear garage overhead lights, they actually split right here using our old friend the posi taps. One of them goes down in the wall with the factory wiring harness and back through and into the rear door here, whereas the other one goes up through a grommet protected hole and along the support rib of the van with the water pump cable in blue secured with our wing zip ties that we've been using. They both drop down here with the garage light going into the wall where we drilled a hole for the speaker cables and into the back door, and the water pump dropping down inside this wall cavity where I protected it with split loom since I couldn't fit trim lock in there, and it finally terminates here for now. I ran 4 other wires, including this orangey one, that go up through the C-pillar as well and along this vertical bundle. I was only able to fit 3 through the grommet hole and then trim locked where the red wire passes, which is power for the guzzle water filter. The orange one is the tank level sensor for the gray tank. The black one is the electronic ball valve for dumping the gray tank so I can open and drain it from inside the van. And then finally, the blue one is for power for the Laveo dry flush toilet. All of these run along the van roof support rib here using the same wing zip ties that clip into the factory holes. They cross to the other side of the van where they follow some of the previous wires we ran down through this wall cavity and behind the junction box that we just added. 2 of the wires, the ones for the toilet and the guzzle, temporarily exit here, where the other 2 for the gray tank go through a little opening in the wall here and exit out the same 3-inch opening we used for the AC wires. Let's go under the van to check that out. Don't mind my little Thinsulate temporary plug here. That is what's going to actually feed the gray tank, but we have this ball valve here that's hooked in, and these are those wires that run along the top support rib of the van. This is the ball valve, and then we have one more on top of here, which is the tank level sensor. Both those get connected to these nice DT plugs so that I can pull the tank off without having to worry about the wiring if I ever need to pull that down. These go up through this hole and then they get tied in with all this stuff. This is our plumbing, the AC electrical, and then those go up and catch the rib across the top of the van. We have 2 more black sleeved wires that we ran that come up that same wire cavity and pass through the C-pillar through another grommeted hole we drilled. Excuse this mess of wires right here. This is my temporary holding location for all S-bar heaters. They follow these S-bar wires towards the front of the van where they drop down another trim lock protected slot in the van and through this open cavity here. One of these is for the additional dimmer touchpad up front, and the other is for power to the bench seat USB plugs.
Well, my friends, that is a circuit complete for this project. It is more frustrating than it is difficult. You need to have a lot of patience if you're going to follow in our footsteps, be able to plan things out very, very well, have some basic electrical skills, and also be ready to cut some holes in your van. For that, we are going to rate this project intermediate. In total, we spent about $350 on this project with wire and materials, so overall, not that bad. And for the time, I'm not even going to touch there. Between all the rainy weekends that we had in California this year and adding the complexity of doing all the custom stuff like the lock box that you saw, it actually took a minute. If you like what we are doing, please give this video a thumbs up. It really does help us out. If you have any comments or questions about anything you've seen in this video, drop those in the comments section below. And on your way down there, you know what to do. Slap that subscribe button. We'll see you next time. I think this is probably shooting right in the crotch.
I had a capacitor to
We are back behind you.